And that's the memo. Now for the top story tonight, reaction with us, Dennis Neal, correspondent for the Fox Business Network, and Nomi Prins, a liberal economic analyst and author of the upcoming book, Black Tuesday. Is that tax day, Nomi? Is that Black Tuesday where we pay our taxes? I think that's it.
It could be. It was the day that the market crashed and banks basically worked our way into a Great Depression.
Back in the 30s? Okay.
Back in the 30s.
No, it was a little history thing.
A little history thing, but the parallels to today, which is at this time,
okay, now where am I going wrong here? My basic theory, again, is that taxation is strangling the economy. That's what it is. Where am I going wrong?
The economy is being strangled because, A, there isn't enough revenue coming into those states that you mentioned are bankrupt, because there's less wealth, because the housing market got crushed because of what banks did to it, because corporations, which you mentioned, aren't paying their effective tax share properly. In New York City, in New York State, only 6% of the revenues that New York State takes in come from corporations. So if you're looking at only a very small margin coming from them, you don't have enough to distribute to create the jobs and the infrastructure and the revenue.
But if you raise the corporate tax or force them to pay more, then they lay more people off and the unemployment rate goes up. Or they go offshore to Bermuda and the Caymans. Or they move, like GE, move their things to China. So if you go after the corporations to fill this insatiable need the states and the municipalities have, you're going to make the economy worse, are you not?
Well, the corporations are a component, but since 2006 to now, their actual tax rate in the state, in New York State even, has gone up by 0.5%, and they're still only paying in a recession 6%, and they don't collect it. So what we need is to figure out a way, A, to make sure that companies
everybody knows the way. Flat tax, that's the way.
Progressive tax, that companies actually can hire people here in that respect. They hire people in America. The revenues come into America. People aren't hit by external
The way to
things.
get money, revenue stream, is a flat tax and a small consumption tax, as I've said. Now, you say, am I wrong about the economy being strangled by taxation?
Well, you are entirely right about that. And let's remember that while we struggle mightily in the income tax system federally for a nice progressive tax, many of the taxes that local and state governments and county governments pass, they're too cowardly to come out and say, I'm lifting your taxes. So they just pass a bunch of user fees. So that you have tolls,
you don't even know
you have cigarette taxes.
You don't even know.
When you're addicted to tobacco, you have almost no choice.
I don't feel sorry for those pinheads.
It's a very regressive tax on the poor.
I'd raise it to $20 a pack.
But here's a bigger point you're missing, if I may, Mr. O'Reilly.
Sure.
Instead of focusing how we should reduce various taxes for the poor, or focusing on let's give them more money, we have given, since Johnson declared the war on poverty in 1964, our government has spent more than $12 trillion on anti-poverty programs. A war is supposed to have a victory and an ending. And yet in 1964, 36 million people in poverty, 18%. Today, 49 million people in poverty, 15%. We're down only 3 points in 45 years.
We did a segment on that. But the poor, as the Bible says, will always be with us. And I don't begrudge the poor. I don't think the poor are driving the economy into the ground. But President Obama is being disingenuous when he makes it about income taxes for the wealthy. He never says about all the taxes that I just listed. He never says, hey, you working Americans, you're getting hosed. Okay, because not only am I taking money from you at a rate of about 25%, but your hometown team is just taking that money away from you, and there's no more money to spend unless you want to rack up credit card debt. That's where we are, Nomi. That's where we are.
And we do need to find that money to spend to create the infrastructure, to keep the jobs. And the reality is that those extra taxes contribute to only about 9 to 10% of overall federal revenue and overall state revenue. So you still have this massive gap of revenue not coming in, whether it's from a small additional component on the
we don't need higher rates. We need a more efficient collective machine. I don't believe that. Not in a recession. If you're going to put the higher rates on, you're going to go deeper and deeper.
But you incentivize them to grow business in America, to create jobs here in New York.
One more time, and I'll give you the last word. God help me. Are you for a consumption tax? Because it's $1 trillion, $1 trillion, ladies and gentlemen, untaxed money by people who don't declare it. And I want a 2% consumption tax. So everybody, you for that? You for that? That's how you get revenue.
It's a wrong idea, because all Europe did is they passed that value-added tax, and they never cut spending. They just use it for extra revenue.
The way you get revenue is to bring jobs, to increase companies here.
The way you get revenue is on a consumption tax.
The way you get revenue is to bring money here.
Everybody who's ever put it in.
It is.
The way you get more money, look, when Bush cut those Bush tax cuts, and we were so upset about, do you know that federal revenues went up 44% in the next
that.
4 years after
I
you
am
cut the taxes. Don't raise taxes. Let's remember also, we're
Not
talking
raising
about the poor.
taxes. I'm cutting income taxes down. I would cut them.
You're
okay?
adding a whole
But you
extra.
make companies pay tax.
That's raising a tax.
Yeah,
and government will just spend more. We need to cut spending, right?
Look, Dennis,
We need
maybe
to increase revenue into this country.
Right. Maybe it's
letting
okay.
business grow.
Maybe it's okay with you to have $1 trillion untaxed. It ain't okay with me. It's not okay with me. All those dope dealers and everybody else not paying anything, they can pay their consumption tax to the tune of 2%.